You've seen billionaires with yachts and skyscrapers, but what if I told you the richest, most powerful players in the Arab world aren't just kings? They're women. Today we reveal 10 Arab women who shattered glass ceilings and built billion-dollar legacies. Lubna Olayan, Saudi's financial queen. Imagine being the first woman in an entire nation allowed to run a major bank. Not just any bank, but one tied to billions in global investments. That's exactly what Lubna Olayan did in Saudi Arabia, a country where, for decades, women couldn't even drive. Lubna wasn't handed power, she earned it. Born into one of Saudi Arabia's wealthiest families, she took the helm of Olayan Financing Company, one of the largest privately held conglomerates in the Middle East. But instead of riding on legacy, she transformed it. Under her leadership, the company expanded into dozens of global markets, partnering with major American brands from Coca-Cola to General Motors. And while she was building an empire, she was also building a movement. Lubna pushed for something unheard of in Saudi corporate culture: women in leadership. She hired women, promoted them, mentored them. She became the first Saudi woman to join a boardroom dominated by men, breaking barriers in ways most people thought were impossible. In a society long shaped by tradition, Lubna's presence alone was revolutionary. But she didn't stop at breaking glass ceilings. She shattered stone walls. She helped establish the first Saudi private bank, chaired by a woman, and in doing so, she became a living symbol of what Arab women could accomplish, not in 50 years, but right now. For Americans watching from afar, her story may seem like something from a movie, but Lubna's legacy is real, ongoing, and quietly changing the face of wealth and leadership in a region built on oil and now on women like her. Sheikha Hanadi Al-Thani, Qatar's investment boss. Now let's talk about Sheikha Hanadi Al-Thani, a woman from Qatar. She took it over in a region where male dominance in money and real estate has been the rule. Hanadi rewrote the playbook. She's the CEO of Qatar Ladies Investment Company. But don't let the name fool you. This isn't some niche boutique fund. It's a powerhouse in real estate and venture capital, investing billions across the Middle East. Sheikha Hanadi manages properties that define Doha's skyline, runs companies that create thousands of jobs, and advises the Qatari government on economic strategy. And get this, before becoming a business titan, she was a university lecturer in finance, so not only did she master the game, she taught it. Hanadi is known for bringing Wall Street-style investing into the heart of the Gulf, pushing for economic diversification before it became a trend. What's even more incredible? She's doing all of this in a society where women's names often don't appear in business headlines, until she changed that. Hanadi became a board member at some of Qatar's largest financial institutions and helped other women follow her path. She's not just a successful businesswoman, she's an architect of Qatar's future economy. Whether it's real estate, private equity, or national policy, Sheikha Hanadi is at the center of it all. To an American viewer, she's like a mix of Oprah's influence, Warren Buffett's investment instincts, and a little Steve Jobs innovation, all wrapped in Qatari tradition. She's one of the clearest examples that women aren't just participating in the Middle East transformation, they're leading it. Rania Al Gurg, the corporate queen of the Emirates. In a city known for gold-plated hotels and architectural one-upmanship, Rania Al Gurg stands out for something quieter but far more lasting: institutional power. She didn't start her journey in the business world. In fact, Raja began her career in education as a headmistress at a government girls' school in Dubai during the 1970s, a time when very few women in the UAE were encouraged to work, let alone lead. What sparked her transition? A personal decision to carry forward her father's legacy, but on her own terms. Her father, Asa Saleh Al Gurg, was one of Dubai's original merchant pioneers. He built the Al Gurg Group from the ground up, but when Raja joined the company in the early 1980s, she was the first woman in the boardroom. And she didn't speak unless spoken to for months. She listened, she learned, then she led. Quietly, strategically, Raja began transforming a traditional trading house into one of the UAE's most diversified conglomerates. Under her leadership, Al Gurg Group became the regional face for American and European brands, including Siemens, British American Tobacco, and 3M. Today, the group operates across 25-plus companies spanning healthcare, construction, retail, and education. But here's something exclusive. Behind the scenes, Raja is also a confidant to Dubai's ruling family. Her close relationship with the late Sheikh Rashid bin Saeed Al Maktoum gave her rare access to policy-shaping platforms, leading to her historic appointment as one of the first women on the Dubai Chamber of Commerce board. She later became vice chair, where she actively shaped private sector reform. For American viewers, imagine if someone combined the quiet resilience of Ruth Bader Ginsburg with the business acumen of Meg Whitman. That's the level of quiet, calculated impact we're talking about. Raja didn't need billboards or billion-dollar IPOs. She built something better, a multi-generational business empire, a pipeline for women in leadership, and a seat at the highest levels of decision-making in the Gulf. Her name may not trend on Twitter, but in the UAE's elite circles, Raja Al Gurg is legacy in motion. Fatima Al-Jaber, the woman who builds cities. While most billionaires build portfolios, Fatima Al-Jaber builds cities, literally. She's the chief operating officer of the Al-Jaber Group, one of the largest construction firms in the Middle East. Think skyscrapers, highways, bridges, airports. If it's massive and made of steel and concrete in the UAE, her fingerprints are probably on it. Now picture this, a woman at the head of bulldozers, cranes, and mega projects in a region where construction has long been considered a man's job. But Fatima didn't just step into the industry, she rewrote the blueprint. Trained as an engineer, she worked her way through the technical trenches. While other executives stayed in corner offices, Fatima walked job sites, reviewed architectural plans, and earned respect the hard way, on the ground. That boots-on-the-ground mentality catapulted her to COO, where she now oversees projects worth billions. For an American audience, she's a mix between Rosalind Brewer's executive skill and Eleanor Roosevelt's leadership presence, a figure of substance and strategy who leads with vision and clarity. But beyond buildings, Fatima is laying the foundation for something even bigger: women's inclusion in male-dominated fields. She's spoken at global conferences, launched mentoring initiatives, and sits on several national councils, pushing for gender balance in technical careers. Her leadership is transforming more than skylines, it's reshaping cultural expectations. In a world where few women wear hard hats, Fatima made it her crown. From boardrooms to construction zones, she's redefining what power looks like in the modern Arab world, and she's just getting started. Sheikha Lubna Al-Qasimi, the minister who changed everything. If you ever thought politics in the Middle East was a men-only game, Sheikha Lubna al-Qasimi proved otherwise, and she did it in style. She wasn't just a trailblazer, she was the first ever female minister in the United Arab Emirates, and in a country where tradition and hierarchy dominate government, that's more than a title, it's a revolution. Her first appointment? Minister of Economy. But she didn't stop there. Over the years, she took on roles in foreign trade, international cooperation, and tolerance. Yes, tolerance. A ministry she helped define, signaling a national shift toward more inclusive values. For a mature American audience, think of her like Condoleezza Rice or Madeleine Albright, but with the added challenge of doing it in a region where women in politics were nearly non-existent. She wasn't just part of the cabinet, she was shaping it. Sheikha Lubna earned degrees in the US, worked in Silicon Valley, and brought that global perspective home to the UAE. Her mission? Elevate education, empower women, and prove that leadership isn't defined by gender. She became a global icon, recognized by Forbes, the UN, and countless international institutions. Her leadership style? Calm, strategic, and visionary. And while others talked about change, she made it law. Today, every woman in the Gulf with political ambitions can point to Sheikha Lubna and say, "She did it, so can I." Lubna es Olayan, Saudi banking's first lady of reform. If you grew up believing that money and power in Saudi Arabia belong to men, Lubna es Olayan is living proof that even the deepest traditions can be challenged and changed. Born into the influential Olayan family in 1955, Lubna inherited a name, but what she built was a legacy of her own. Educated in the US with a master's degree from Indiana University, she brought home not just knowledge but a new vision of leadership. While Saudi women were still banned from driving, Lubna was quietly taking over as CEO of Olayan Financing Company, a $20 billion empire with partnerships ranging from Coca-Cola to IBM. But here's the exclusive part most people don't know. When Lubna entered her father's boardroom in the 1980s, she wasn't just the only woman. She was unwelcome. Board members refused to make eye contact. Some wouldn't speak directly to her, but she stayed, listened, took notes, and by the 2000s she had turned Olayan into one of the most globally diversified companies in the Middle East. She was the first woman ever appointed to the board of a Saudi public company, long before such things were legal for others. And when she became chairwoman of Saudi British Bank in 2019, it marked the first time a woman led a Saudi bank. What makes her different? Lubna didn't fight tradition with protests, she dismantled it from within. She quietly hired women, created leadership pipelines, and challenged hiring practices from the top down. Today, her boardrooms include women in hijabs, women in pantsuits, and everything in between. Because for Lubna, success isn't just personal, it's systemic. And thanks to her, thousands of Saudi women now have seats at tables they once couldn't even enter the building to see. Sarah Akbar, the Oilfield commander. In the Gulf, few names carry more weight than Al-Thani, Qatar's ruling family. But Sheikha Hanadi bin Nasser Al-Thani didn't rely on royalty to define her legacy. She built her reputation in the one place where no titles matter, the world of finance. Long before Qatar was grabbing headlines for World Cups and sky-piercing towers, Hanadi was doing something few Gulf women dared, walking into a boardroom and making multi-million-dollar decisions, not as a figurehead but as an economist, entrepreneur, and strategist. Armed with a master's degree in economics from Qatar University and an early stint as a lecturer in banking and finance, Hanadi began advising on public and private ventures in the 1990s, when the notion of a woman leading real estate projects was almost unheard of. Her insider knowledge and global training positioned her to spot patterns others missed. She didn't wait for reforms to empower women, she simply moved faster than the culture around her. In 2000, she founded Amwal, the first investment banking firm in Qatar licensed by the central bank. That's an exclusive nugget most people don't know. She wasn't just managing money, she was rewriting regulations to make sure women like her could build financial institutions from scratch. Today, Amwal oversees billions in private wealth and asset management, but she didn't stop there. She became vice chair of Nasser bin Khalid Al Thani and Sons Group, leading projects that help shape Doha's skyline, from luxury hotels to major infrastructure. She advises Qatar Central Bank, sits on economic planning boards, and mentors a new generation of Qatari women entering finance. Her approach is clinical, calm, and relentless, more Janet Yellen than Silicon Valley unicorn chaser. And in a world where finance is still very much a men's game, Sheikha Hanadi plays like a master with a generational vision. Maha Al-Attar, the quiet billionaire. Now, not every billionaire wants to be on magazine covers. Some do their work in silence, quietly shaping economies and building empires. That's Maha Al-Attar, one of the most powerful women in Arab finance you've probably never heard of. She's not flashy. You won't find her at red carpet events, but Maha has made a billion-dollar impact in private equity, quietly investing in some of the most promising sectors in the Middle East: fintech, green energy, infrastructure, and health. Her secret weapon: precision. Maha has a reputation for picking winners early: startups, development projects, and emerging markets that later explode in value. She's like the Warren Buffett of the Gulf: calm, calculated, and always thinking long-term. But here's the kicker: she's not just in it for profit. Maha has funded women-led businesses, clean energy startups, and economic reform projects that support long-term stability in the region. Her investments are building not just wealth, but resilience. In boardrooms where few women have a seat, Maha commands attention. She's a strategist, a mentor, and a quiet power broker behind the scenes of some of the region's biggest financial moves. For an older American viewer, think of her like Laurene Powell Jobs, not in the spotlight, but playing a massive role in reshaping how the region grows, invests, and reimagines its future. Maha doesn't chase attention. She creates opportunity. And that's the kind of billionaire legacy that speaks louder than headlines. Sheikha Moza bint Nasser, royalty with a global mission. When most people think of royalty, they picture gowns, castles, and gala dinners. But Sheikha Moza bint Nasser, the former First Lady of Qatar, took her royal platform and turned it into a global mission to change lives, especially through education and women's empowerment. Sheikha Moza is no ceremonial figure. She's the founding force behind Qatar Foundation, a multi-billion-dollar nonprofit that's reshaping education, science, and community development across the Arab world. She helped launch Education City, a sprawling campus that brings Ivy League schools like Cornell and Georgetown straight into the Gulf. That's right, American institutions teaching in the desert under her vision. But her work isn't just local. She's a UN advocate for sustainable development goals and has spoken at the World Economic Forum, the UN, and every major global stage that matters. Her message? That education is the most powerful tool to lift societies, and it must be accessible to all, especially women and youth in conflict zones. And she lives what she preaches. Through her initiatives, thousands of young people across the Middle East and Africa have gained scholarships, leadership training, and access to top-tier learning opportunities. Sheikha Moza has channeled her wealth and influence into lasting impact, one generation at a time. For a U.S. audience, she's a mix of Jacqueline Kennedy, Melinda Gates, and Oprah. Elegant, strategic, and globally respected, she's redefined what it means to be a royal in the 21st century, not by wearing a crown, but by building futures. In a world where influence is often superficial, Sheikha Moza proves that true power builds legacies, not just headlines. You've just met 10 of the most powerful Arab women alive, and what they're doing goes far beyond headlines or hashtags. These women didn't just break through glass ceilings, they rebuilt the ceiling entirely with steel, strategy, and soul. So now we'll ask you, which story surprised you the most? Whose journey inspired you the most and why? We want to hear your voice in the comments. And if you want more untold stories of wealth, power, and legacy, subscribe now to Billionaire Zone, where we go deeper than headlines and reveal the forces shaping the future from behind the scenes. Because sometimes the most powerful people are the ones you've never even heard of.